Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Zubair Saeed from the Fairfax County Health Department. I conduct public health outreach to the Muslim community in Fairfax County. So today we're going to talk about influenza, flu, and what we can do to help ourselves prevent flu and stay healthy during this flu season. So let's get right into it. To begin, we talk about why it is that we're talking about flu. And the reason for that is because many people, when they start hearing about flu or they think about flu, they think it's not something which is a serious disease or serious illness, right? A lot of people, they get flu. Most of them, even if they get flu, they recover on their own after a few days and then life goes on. So what's the big deal? But there's a lot more than just that. So every year in the United States, 200,000 Americans go to the hospital every year because of flu. And tens of thousands of Americans every year on average die of flu every year. So even though we think of flu, which is something not very serious or something to worry about, there are a lot of people who suffer just in this country alone because of flu. It's actually in the top 10 causes of death in the United States. So we need to take flu seriously. And that's why we're talking about it today. So what is influenza? What is flu? Flu is a respiratory disease. It's caused by a virus, which is spread to the air when people cough and sneeze. That's how flu gets spread, when people cough and sneeze into the air. But flu itself, or influenza, is caused by a virus. And what are some symptoms of flu? So the primary symptoms of flu are, first of all, you have a fever, meaning you have a temperature of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, plus cough and or sore throat. So these are the primary symptoms of flu. Some other symptoms of flu also include things like body aches, fatigue, chills, vomiting, and diarrhea. Okay? So now, when we're talking about flu, what are we not talking about? Okay, so for this presentation, when I'm referring to flu or influenza, I'm not talking about stomach flu. That's a term that sometimes gets tossed around, stomach flu. Stomach flu is not really a medical term. It's used to kind of describe an array of many different types of diseases which affect, like, the stomach and intestines, the gut area, that can result in vomiting and diarrhea, but can be caused by many things, many different types of viruses, bacteria, or parasites. Okay, so stomach flu is a very general, broad term, and so when we're talking about flu today, we're not talking about that. Okay, when we're talking about flu, we are also not talking about the common cold. Okay, so the common cold is another disease caused by a different virus, which has some similar symptoms to flu, like you can get a runny nose, you can get a cough, but typically you don't get a fever with the common cold, okay? So when we're talking about flu today, we're not talking about the common cold, and we're not talking about stomach flu. We're just talking about influenza. So how does flu get spread? As I said a little bit earlier, flu is spread when people cough and sneeze into the air. And you can see in that image of this man coughing or sneezing into the air, he spews out millions of these moisture droplets. And in those tiny droplets are things like bacteria, viruses, germs. And when people cough and sneeze onto their bare hands, and then they touch other surfaces like a table, or they touch a doorknob, they can leave their germs behind for other people to touch. Or when you shake hands with someone, and then that person touches their face, like their nose or their ears. So all those viruses and germs are on your hands. You don't see them, they're microscopic, so you don't see it, but then when you touch your face, that's how germs and viruses and stuff get inside our body. So this is how flu gets spread, from person to person to person. And that's really important to remember later on when we talk about community immunity. Now, there are certain groups of people in our community, if they get a flu infection, are at higher risk of what we call flu complications. What do I mean by flu complications? I mean going to the hospital or dying because of flu. That's what I'm talking about. So these groups of people that you see on this slide, they are at higher risk of going to the hospital or dying because of flu if they get a flu infection. So who are these groups of people? Well, very young children, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years of age. Anyone over the age of 64. Pregnant women. And anyone with a chronic medical condition, like maybe you have diabetes, or you have asthma, or heart disease, or lung disease, any type of long-term medical condition. So all of these groups of people, what do they have in common? Their immune system doesn't work as well as the rest of us. Therefore, they are more at risk for these flu complications because their body is not as strong fighting off different types of diseases, including flu. Okay? So therefore, it's very highly recommended that these groups of people that I just mentioned, that they get the flu vaccine every year to help them stay healthy and safe. Getting the flu vaccine is the single most effective way of preventing flu. Now, when can you get flu vaccine? Flu vaccine typically comes out in September. It starts coming out in September, but flu season actually starts from October and goes all the way until May. Okay? And there are two types of flu vaccine. You have the nasal spray versus the injection. What are the differences, really quick, between the nasal spray vaccine and the injection? The injection uses what we call a dead or inactivated form of the flu virus. We can give that form of the flu vaccine to anyone over the age of 6 months. The other type of flu vaccine is the nasal spray flu vaccine. We can give that to people between the ages of 2 and 49 if they are healthy and they are not pregnant. It uses what we call a live but weakened form of the flu virus, the nasal spray. Okay, so both vaccines are very safe and effective. It just depends on what age you are and if you are healthy and if you fit in that age range that I just talked about. Now, why is it that we have to get a flu vaccine every year? Why do we call it the annual seasonal flu vaccine? Meaning you have to get the flu vaccine every year. Because other types of vaccines, you just have to get it once or twice, or you get a booster every so often. But flu vaccine, we have to get it every year because these flu viruses, they change every year. They're very tricky. Their genetic material changes. Sometimes it changes a lot more. Sometimes it changes a little bit. But regardless, these changes result in us having to update the flu vaccine every year so that we can keep up. So that's why we have to get flu vaccine every year. And every February, right in the middle of the flu season, every February, scientists, they pick out the 3 or 4 most common or dangerous flu strains which are out there, and they use that to formulate next season's flu vaccine. So the flu vaccine that we have right now is based on flu viral strains which were out there in February of this calendar year, but in last year's flu season, right? Because flu season goes all the way from October to May, and then again the flu season starts again now, October. So this flu vaccine which is out now is based on flu viral strains which existed last flu season in February of this calendar year. Okay? And they usually pick the 3 or 4 most common or dangerous flu strains. But between February and now, flu viruses, they can change. Okay? They can change. Sometimes they change a lot, sometimes they change a little bit. And because of these changes, the effectiveness of the flu vaccine to fight off flu can vary from year to year. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, who should get the flu vaccine? Everyone over the age of 6 months. That's what the Centers for Disease Control recommends. That's what the Fairfax County Health Department recommends, that everyone over the age of 6 months should get the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine cannot be given to babies less than 6 months of age simply because their immune system cannot tolerate the vaccine. Their immune system is not well developed enough to tolerate. People with weak immune systems, they cannot get the flu vaccine either. And if children who are under the age of 9 years, if they are getting the flu vaccine for the first time, then they get 2 doses, which are spread apart by 1 month. Okay, so again, if a child is less than 9 years old and they are getting the flu vaccine for the first time, then they get 2 doses spread apart by a month. Okay? Now, if enough people in our community get the flu vaccine, it not only protects the people who get the flu vaccine, but it protects all of us. It's like a cocoon effect, and we call that community immunity. Okay, so it's not, so the flu vaccine, again, it's not only recommended for the high-risk groups that we talked about, it's recommended for everyone over the age of 6 months. So in this diagram, I just want to go over this diagram really quickly, which illustrates community immunity. On the top, you see, well, in each of the pictures, you see different colors, okay? So the blue people in the pictures are people who are healthy, they don't have flu, and they are healthy. The people in red are people who have an active flu infection and they are sick. And the people in yellow are people who have gotten vaccinated from flu, they got the flu vaccine, and they are healthy. Okay, so let's go over the different pictures. So on the top, you see on the left-hand side there, you see a lot of blue people, they're healthy, and you see two people who have the flu infection, they are in red. So what happens over time in this scenario, as you shift over to the right, a lot of people now are in red, a lot of people have gotten the flu infection because of those two people, they have spread their flu infection to other people. That's what happens all the time during flu season, okay? Now, let's shift to the middle picture. On the left-hand side, you see most of the people are in blue, they are healthy, they don't have flu infection. Two people still have the flu infection in red, they are sick with flu. But what's different in this picture is we have some people in yellow who did get the flu vaccine and they are also healthy. So what happens over time as we shift over to the right in this scenario is that, does flu get spread to other people? Yes, flu still gets spread to other people. Why? Because only a few people got vaccinated. Most people are still left vulnerable to the effects of the flu virus. So in this scenario, a lot of people become red with flu infection. Okay, now let's go to the bottom picture. On the left-hand side, in this scenario, you see a lot of people now are in yellow. So they got the flu vaccine. In this scenario, most of the people are in yellow. They got the flu vaccine. We still have a couple of people who have flu infection in red. So what happens over time in this scenario? You see on the right-hand side, in the bottom picture, flu didn't get spread. Flu didn't get spread because most of the people, not all of them, right? Not all of them got the flu vaccine, but most of them did. So because of that, there's less of a chance for a flu virus to go around. So in this scenario, flu doesn't get spread, it's contained, and most people are healthy. This is what we call community immunity. It's the concept whereby if enough people are vaccinated against flu, it not only protects the people who got the vaccine, but it protects the people around them as well. It protects the whole community, if enough people get it. So let's go over one really common myth about flu vaccine. A lot of people, they don't want to get flu vaccine because they think that the flu vaccine will give them a flu infection. So can you get flu from the flu vaccine? So the answer is no. That's absolutely false, okay? So when you get the injection, it uses a dead or inactivated form of the flu virus. You cannot get flu from the flu vaccine. So let's go over some reasons as to why when someone gets the flu vaccine, they still get sick. Okay, so I want to repeat that. Sometimes people get the flu vaccine and afterward they get sick. But we need to keep in mind that these two things are not connected. They're not related to each other. Okay? I'm going to now go over some of the reasons as to why sometimes when people get the flu vaccine, they still get sick. Okay? First of all, it takes 2 full weeks to become fully protected after you get the flu vaccine. Okay? So let's say I get flu vaccine today, and tomorrow or a few days from now or even a week from now, I come into contact with someone who has the flu. Can I still get flu? Yes, because it takes 14 days. In that 14 days, your body is reacting to the flu vaccine. It's producing antibodies. It's reacting. Your immune system is building protection for a future flu infection. So that process takes 14 days. So sometimes people get the flu vaccine on one day, and then a few days later, they come into contact with someone who has the flu. They can't see it with your eyes. Can you see flu virus with your eyes? No. So if I get flu vaccine today and somebody who has flu is coughing and sneezing around me, and they have a flu virus on their hand, and I shake hands with them, and then I touch my face and I get flu, I will come down with flu, right? And I will think in my mind, because the only new thing that happened was, oh, I got the flu vaccine, therefore the flu vaccine must have caused me to get sick. But you didn't see the flu virus on your hand. You didn't see the flu virus with the people coughing and sneezing around you. So that's why sometimes people, they get sick after they get the flu vaccine, but it has nothing to do with the vaccine. It's just that you got sick because of someone else. Okay, another reason as to why sometimes people get sick even after they get the flu vaccine is that the flu vaccine covers for 3 or 4 flu strains and other flu strains which look like those 3 or 4 flu strains. But how many flu strains are out there? Hundreds. There's many, many flu strains. So in other words, the flu vaccine will not protect you against every single flu infection. Okay? That is not the job of the flu vaccine. Nobody says that if you get the flu vaccine, you're 100% protected against flu. There's no way you're going to get flu. No one says that. It's not true. Okay? But the reason we get flu vaccine is so that we reduce our chances of going to the hospital or dying because of flu. So even if you get the flu vaccine and you still come down with flu because you get exposed to a different flu strain, which is not covered for in the vaccine, the chances of you going to the hospital or dying because of flu are dramatically reduced. That's why we get the flu vaccine, to stop us from dying. Okay? But it doesn't guarantee that you will not get a flu infection. So if I get flu vaccine today, and I come into contact with someone who has a flu infection around me, but they have a different flu infection, which looks very different than the flu virus which is protected for in the vaccine. Can I still get flu? Yes, I can still get flu. That happens sometimes. Sometimes a person gets flu vaccine one day, and they come into contact with someone who has a different type of flu, and they get sick with flu, and we think in our mind, the vaccine must have caused me to get sick with flu, because I just got the vaccine. Okay, so they think in their mind, aha, the vaccine caused me to get sick. I'm not going to get the vaccine ever again. Again, the flu vaccine didn't cause you to get flu, you got sick because of something else. Okay? Another thing to keep in mind is flu vaccines protect you against how many diseases? How many diseases does flu vaccine protect you against? Anyone want to shout out an answer? It only protects you against one disease, which is flu. It will not protect you against the common cold. It will not protect you against other diseases. So if I get the flu vaccine today and I come into contact with someone who has the common cold, like 3 days from now or a week from now, can I still get a cold infection? Yes. I can still get a runny nose. I can still get a cough. So because of that, sometimes people get the flu infection one day and they get a cold infection, or they get the flu vaccine one day, okay, and then a few days later, they can come into contact with someone who has a cold, and they get sick with the cold, and they think that the vaccine caused them to get sick. But the reality is you got infected with a different disease, which looks like flu. Does that make sense to everyone? Because that also happens all the time. These viruses like cold virus and flu, they are more common during the cooler months, the colder months. Why is that? Because the flu virus is more stable in colder temperatures. And if you think about it, what happens when the weather gets colder? Are people outdoors or indoors more? They're indoors more. And because they're indoors, they're spreading their diseases much more easily to everyone else. Okay? So that's why things like common cold and flu, they're more common during the colder months. Another reason sometimes people don't feel well after they get the flu vaccine is because of side effects. Every medicine or every vaccine has side effects. So flu vaccine has side effects too. So if you get the shot in the arm, you can get soreness and redness around the injection site. I just got my flu vaccine 2 days ago. Okay? And I had a little bit of soreness for that day. Then the next day it went away. Okay? So I'm not coming down with flu. I'm not getting a disease. It's just a side effect of the vaccine. You can get soreness and redness around the injection site. You can even get a runny nose. If you get the nasal spray flu vaccine, you can get a runny nose. You might feel some minor aches or pains, but they disappear within 24 to 48 hours. Flu doesn't disappear within 24 to 48 hours. Okay, flu, it stays with you for a few days or a week or so. So that, when you are experiencing what we call side effects, these aren't symptoms of flu you're coming down with. They are temporary and minor side effects, which most people, they don't experience. Okay? So these are some of the reasons as to why sometimes people, they get the flu vaccine and they don't feel well or they get sick, but now you know that these two things are not related to each other. Flu vaccine doesn't cause anyone to get sick. Okay, we went through the side effects. Okay, so to summarize really quickly about the benefits of flu vaccines have a very good safety track record. Okay, there's no evidence that flu vaccine or any vaccine causes autism. The benefits of flu vaccine far outweigh any risks. Remember, at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about the statistics for how many people go to the hospital and die because of flu. That is a very real number. Some lady before the presentation told me that she knew somebody who was like 30 years old and they died because of flu. So there are people old and there are people young that die of flu every year. That risk of dying because of flu is much greater than any potential risk from the flu vaccine. So always keep in mind that we have to weigh the benefits and risks of things. In general, flu vaccines are very safe and they're very effective. And not getting the flu vaccine leaves you unprotected against a disease which is potentially very serious. Where can you get flu vaccine? You can get it right now at doctor's offices, our 5 health department clinics, and pharmacies. Okay, so that's where you can get flu vaccine. And again, getting flu vaccine is the single most effective way of preventing flu. But now, let's talk about other ways to protect ourselves against flu. Because flu vaccine is the single most effective way, but there are other ways too. So one thing we can do is to properly wash our hands. Okay? Another thing we can do is properly cover our coughs and sneezes, stay home when we're sick, and get proper sleep and nutrition. Getting 7 hours of sleep per night and getting those fruits and vegetables as part of a balanced and healthy diet. All of these things put together, as well as getting the flu vaccine, can keep you healthy and safe this flu season. Let's talk about some of these things more in depth. So, what is the proper way of washing hands? We use warm water and soap, and we use that to scrub our hands very vigorously, both sides of our hands, in between our fingers, and underneath our fingernails. And we scrub for how long? 20 seconds. Okay, so you count out 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. So you need to spend that time. Most people, when they are in the bathroom, they simply just don't spend that amount of time. Usually, if they do, it's just a few seconds, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, that's it. But you need to spend 20 full seconds. Because it's the friction of the soap against your hands which actually kills germs and disintegrates viruses, breaks up viruses. If you're not spending that time doing that, then you're not really keeping your hands free of germs and bacteria and viruses and things like that. And this not only helps you from getting flu and spreading it to others, but it also helps you from getting other diseases. It's not just flu. Hand washing is good for a lot of contagious diseases. It helps to protect you and keep you healthy from many things. Okay? If you don't have access to soap and running water, can you use a hand sanitizer? Yeah, you can use a hand sanitizer. They recommend that you use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer, which is what kills germs. So you're not taking the alcohol inside your body, you're just putting it on your hands. It's the alcohol in the hand sanitizer which kills germs. Okay, but again, the best way to keep your hands clean is hand washing, like we just talked about. You only use a hand sanitizer if you don't have access to soap and water. Another way to keep ourselves healthy and to protect ourselves from flu and other diseases is that when we cough and sneeze, we don't cough and sneeze onto our bare hands. Because when you do that, all the germs come onto your hands, and then you shake hands with other people, you touch a doorknob, you touch a table, and other people touch these things, and this is how germs get spread very, very quickly in our community. So when you cough and sneeze, you want to cover your cough and sneeze with your sleeve, thereby avoiding contaminating your hands. Or you can use a tissue, cover your cough and sneeze that way, throw away the tissue, and then wash your hands like we talked about. Stay home when you're sick. So when you're sick, you shouldn't go to school or go to work. Stay at home at least for 24 hours without having a fever. Okay, and that's without the use of anti-fever medication. So if you are sick with flu, wait until the fever goes away for at least 24 hours before going back out. Because otherwise, you're going to be spreading flu to other people. And we don't want that, right? So here are some resources. If you want to learn more about flu or flu vaccine, you can go to cdc.gov/flu, or you can go to our Fairfax County Health Department website. So just remember really quick, getting flu vaccine is the single most effective way of preventing flu. If you haven't gotten flu vaccine, please go out and get it to help keep yourself and your family and your community, the Dar Al-Hijrah community and the Fairfax community, safe and healthy. I am now going to pass out a quick survey. While I'm passing it out, feel free to ask me any questions. Just raise your hand. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Okay, so the question is, how can a person differentiate between the common cold infection and a flu infection? So sometimes it can be difficult to differentiate between the two because you can both get, both of them can give you coughing and runny nose and sneezing. But one of the big ways you can tell the difference is, first of all, fever. So typically, common cold, you will not get a temperature of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's your first sign that perhaps it's flu. Another thing is flu symptoms are more severe than a common cold. If you have a common cold infection, you may not feel a little bit well, a little bit runny nose. You can still go out and walk and do whatever. If you have the flu, you will have body aches and fatigue. You will be in your bed. You won't want to get out of your bed. The common cold is not like that. So flu is more severe in its symptoms. Any other questions? Oh yeah. If you get the flu vaccine, you can still get flu. That's correct. Okay, remember, so the question is, if you can still get flu after you get the flu vaccine, what is the point of getting the flu vaccine? Remember what I said is that the primary job or the primary goal of the flu vaccine is not to stop you from getting flu. The primary job of the flu vaccine is to stop you from going to the hospital or dying because of flu. That's what the flu vaccine does pretty well. But it doesn't prevent you from getting every flu infection, meaning that if you get the flu vaccine, and even if you still get flu, at least you won't die because of it. But if you don't get the flu vaccine, and you get flu, you have a much greater risk or chance of dying because of flu compared to the person who did get the flu vaccine. It can reduce the symptoms, it can reduce the length of the symptoms, it can reduce the severity. And because of that, you don't end up going to the hospital. Why do people go to the hospital because of flu? Because they have breathing difficulty. Breathing difficulty. If they can't breathe well, they can't breathe air well. And because that's a medical emergency. If you can't breathe air well, you're going to die soon, right? So that's why people end up going to the hospital. If they have a prolonged flu infection, it weakens their lungs. And when it weakens their lungs, they can get other infections like pneumonia. They can get viral pneumonia, they can get bacterial pneumonia, and then if that doesn't get resolved, they will die. Okay, so that's what happens to a lot of people who die because of flu. They get these severe symptoms, breathing difficulty, end up going to the hospital, get on a respirator. If they may get a secondary infection like pneumonia, and then they can die. Okay? So getting the flu vaccine helps to stop all of that. That's what the flu vaccine does. But it won't necessarily prevent you from getting every single flu infection. They don't say that it will. And that's why I tell people that that is not the primary job of the flu vaccine. It's one of the goals, But the reality is it's not going to prevent you from every single flu infection. But at least you won't die. But if you don't get the flu vaccine, and a lot of people don't, they end up dying because of flu, over something which is preventable. Because it's in the top 10 causes of death in the United States. Chances are someone here will know someone who dies of flu. I mean, that's just reality. So, why not just take a minute, get the little shot, and just go on with your life? At least you have added protection. You have some added protection. You get the flu vaccine every year. Every year you get the flu vaccine. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Are you asking, do you get the flu vaccine only once in your lifetime? It only covers 3 or 4, I said. 3 or 4 strains, and the strains which look like those 3 or 4. Okay? But it will not protect you against 100% of all the flu strains out there. It will protect you against many of them, but not all of them. Okay, you're welcome. What's the best time to get flu vaccine? What? Around this time. That is a correct answer. So, the best time to get flu vaccine is October, November. This is the best time because you want to be prepared for the peak of the flu season, which hits in January, February. Okay? You don't want to get it too early in August, September. You want to get it in October, November, so that your body still has the full protection by the time we get to the peak of the flu season. Because after you get the flu vaccine, the effectiveness of it goes away every month. A little bit, 7%. Okay? So best time to get flu vaccine is now, October, November. I didn't hear the question. You saying, what was the question about the vaccine in September? You got the flu vaccine in September. Okay. So you already got it. It's okay. You can, it's okay. I mean, you can get it, but what we're telling people is it's better to get it in October and November. But you got it last month, you're saying. Yeah, it's okay. But I'm just telling you the best time. The best time, yeah. If you already got it in September, okay. But you got it already, so nothing, you can't get it again. It's not gonna. Yeah, you get it one time every flu season. Yeah. I mean, you could get the flu vaccine again if you wanted to. You could, but I'm not telling you need to do that. I'm just telling you need to just get it once every flu season, and the best time to get it is October, November. That's the best time. Can you get it in September? Yes. Can you get it in December and January, February? Yes. But what's the best time? October, November. It's effective for the whole flu season, from October to May. But remember, what I said is that once you get the flu vaccine, the effectiveness of it goes down by 7% every month after you got it. So, if you get it now, you will be the best protected now in October. But by the time you get to March, it will be significantly decreased. You understand? So that's why we say getting it in August or September is not the best time. It will still give you protection, but you will lose a lot of the protection by the time you get to February, March. See, because I said 7% every month. If you get it in September, and then 4 months go by, October, November, December, January. 4 months go by. Multiply 4 months times 7%. That's 28%. So by the time you get to February, which is peak of the flu season, you'll have lost 28% of the effectiveness of the vaccine. You see? So that's why we say October, I'm saying November, okay, is really the best time. And that's new information that came out this year. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time and for filling out the survey. Jazakallah khair wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.